This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video, March 27th.
The media is filled now with negative stories about how Trump is losing it. He's falling in the polls. All the same people that said he'd never run, and then he ran, who said he'd never win the Republican nomination, DeSantis would beat him, and they were wrong, who said that Trump might win the electoral vote barely, but he wouldn't win the popular vote.
Right.
He wouldn't carry the swing states. All of those predictions were wrong. And I actually was right in my book, The Return, where I predicted the exact opposite of all of those things. And what's going on,
Dick. Yes, you were.
Yep, I was. And what's going on now is that a lot of the businessmen who oppose Trump are now complaining vocally about tariffs. There are a lot of the interests that China controls in the U.S. are busy talking about how horrible tariffs are and how Trump is going to screw up the country. But I'm here to tell you that the opposite is true. The polling shows that Trump is at the best he's ever been. What he's doing is incredibly popular with the country. He's hit an all-time high in the polling. And NBC finds the highest rating for The Right Track, America's on the right track, in 20 years. Let's hear about it. Donald Trump hit the highest approval rating he's ever had as president. And more Americans say the country is on the right track, City of New Orleans, than at any point since 2004, a new poll found, according to NBC News, which is not exactly a Trump organ.
Yeah, right. That's for sure.
On many key issues, voters felt the same way as Trump. Trump's actions on the border being the most popular. 56% said it was a positive change. On the cuts in government spending, 47% said they were good, compared to just 29% who opposed them. NBC poll respondents also appear to be cutting Trump some slack on inflation. 40% said his policies are having a positive effect, 30% said a negative effect. Illustrating how the president remains a political Rorschach test for a deeply divided country, Trump's approval among Republicans is 90%.
That right there is absolutely amazing.
Well, his figures among Democrats are 4%. 4%. The largest gap in approval rating between the president's party and the opposition over the last 80 years, NBC found. In another boost for Trump, NBC News found that the two-decade high of 44% of the registered voters believe the country is on the right track. Hasn't been that high in more than 20 years. So he's doing great, and the voters are really with him. I remember when I worked for Clinton, those long last days, Sandy Berger was the national security advisor.
Remember him?
And every time I talked to Sandy about trade, he would always say, China's going to kill us on it. We can't do anything to alienate China. They'll cut off our credit. We'll be in dire straits. And then after he retired, and then actually after he died, I learned that he was a lobbyist for China. He had been paid, not a lobbyist, but he'd been a consultant to China, to Beijing. And so many of these pundits who tell you that the tariffs are wrong, they're going to hurt us, they're going to destroy us, are in fact paid by the Chinese government.
There you go.
As lobbyists, as public relations consultants, as experts, as political advisors. And what they're saying is absolute baloney. It's totally untrue. Look, the fact is that the tariffs are a mortal threat to China. And if they retaliate against the United States, they're an annoyance and inconvenience to us, but no more. The U.S. pays for about 2/3 of its GDP by domestic demand, American consumers buying from American products. And only about 1/3 of it is dependent on other countries buying our products. Only about 1/3 dependent on exports. The numbers for China are the exact opposite. 2/3 of China's revenues come from foreigners buying their products, and only 1/3 from Chinese people buying Chinese products and services. So when tariffs go up and they make foreign trade harder, if it becomes a tit for tat of the U.S. and China, the U.S. will be the undoubted winner of that, the huge winner, because we have something the Chinese don't have, which is domestic demand. We have a lot of middle-class people, a lot of people who want to buy stuff and buy ratings. The Chinese don't. There's still about 30% of the Chinese people live in poverty. And the percent that are able to afford exports, imported goods, is only about 10 or 20%. In our country, it's about 80%. So we can go through a trade war just fine. They can't. And therefore, they're busy telling American pundits and economists and experts, oh, the United States is self-destructing because of these tariffs. And they're getting people to sell stocks and to drive down the stock market and freak everybody out. And it's all propaganda. It's all propaganda. It's the same BS that said Trump wouldn't win, that Trump couldn't win, and all of that. It's the same people, it's the same errors, it's the same mistakes.
Right.
So don't be conned and don't be fooled by it. On the other hand, the Democratic Party is crashing in a way it has never crashed before, deeper than ever. Mark Penn, my former colleague and sometimes friend, sometimes enemy,
that would be a frenemy,
who runs the Harvard Harris poll, says he has never seen anything like it. The crash of Democrats is unbelievable. In fact, there's a song, Crash by the Primitives, that I discovered. Let's hear it. It describes this well.
Crash Into Me by Dave
Come on,
Matthews.
do it with some of the lyrics in it.
Yeah.
Lux.
That's okay.
But come back when you have it.
You know what it is, Dick? First of all, no matter what he does, it doesn't matter. You know, what Trump does, the Democrats aren't going to support him, period. But the reason why he's at 90 now is we needed a strong leader, just like you need strong, for Putin, for everyone, for terrorists, for law enforcement. You need strength. That weakness just wasn't happening, and Trump exudes strength. It's just what it is.
Does. Now, the opposite of that is the Democratic Party isn't just unpopular with D.C. insiders, but across the country, too. The NBC polls, the party's popularity has plunged to a new low, with only 27% of registered Democrats saying they have a positive opinion of it. Only 27% of Democrats have a positive opinion of the Democratic Party. By 2-1, they say they want new leaders. They say, the Democrats say they want new leaders to fight Trump harder. But it's 2-1.
Now, let me ask you this question. Your opinion, what leaders, who would be able to step into their place for that 27% to go up?
Well, there's nobody there. They'd have to have the same kind of change, much more drastic than I brought about with Bill Clinton, who I basically took a Democrat and made him into a Republican.
So do you think that what's the difference? There is 73% might go over to the Republicans. Some of them will.
Well, I think they're going over to the Republicans hand over fist.
Not voting yet.
Well, they voted. We won the popular vote. Yeah, we won all 7 swing states.
It's not that. It's not 70.
No, but give Trump a chance. He's just taken office.
Okay,
it's going to be difficult for Schumer or any Democrat who voted for the continuing resolution. That was the one to keep the government open.
Right.
To recover from that vote. A donor said, I personally will never support him again. And given the lack of leadership and strategy, it's becoming harder by the day to keep supporting the Democrats. Until I see real change, my wallet is closed. What went on here was that Trump proposed a very good budget with very significant cuts, and you've been reading about them from Elon Musk. And in every agency, they're slashing overhead, they're cutting spending, and it's having a big effect. And all of the people whose oxes are being gored, who are losing funding, who are losing manpower, who are losing employees, are going crazy saying, oh my God, this is horrible, this is terrible. And so when Trump proposed his budget, it passed the House along straight party lines by like one vote. Then it went to the Senate, and Schumer could have let there be a filibuster that would have shut down the government until Trump gave in or they gave in. And Schumer, in the only responsible act of his political career, said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he said correctly that if we shut down the government now, we will be blamed, not Trump, and will crash even more. So he voted to keep it open. He voted to pass the Trump budget.
But he didn't do that for us. He did it for his
thing.
His party,
and the Democrats are now going completely berserk and talking about how horrible Chuck Schumer is. And he's lost tremendous power.
You think AOC's going to beat him?
Yeah, I think she'll run. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
And the Democrats are falling behind in the race for the Senate in 2026. There are 3 key seats which are marginal seats, which the Republicans or Democrats could win, in Michigan, Minnesota, and New Hampshire. And all 3 have incumbent Democratic senators. Tammy Baldwin in Michigan, Tina Smith in Minnesota, and I forgot the name of the person, Janine Sheehan in New Hampshire.
Right.
And they're all retiring. They're not running for re-election. Those are now open seats, and the Republicans could win them. And then Jen Ossoff, the radical, crazy communist from Georgia, who won in the rigged election of 2022, is going to be up again. So we'll have 4 Senate seats that we absolutely could pick up, as opposed to the Democrats trying to take it over again. With the Democratic Party approval falling to 29%.
I thought it was 27. Oh,
well, 27 in one poll, 29.
Right.
Elton John has some good thoughts about that. So when we come back, we'll be talking about why that's happening. Why is Trump absolutely soaring and the Democrats are crashing? Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. So let's spend a little more time about the Democratic Party rating crashing to 29 or 27% approval. It's unbelievable.
Let's.
CNN senior data analyst Harry Enton said on CNN that the Democratic Party's ratings were at record lows. Enton said, how can you go lower than that? 27%? Record lows. The lowest going back to 1992 in CNN polling. The lowest going back to until 1990 in NBC polling. The majority of Americans hold an unfavorable or negative view of the Democratic Party at that point.
No kidding.
At this point. CNN noted that party approval has dropped over 4 years, coincidentally the 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency, by more than 20 points. They went from 49 to 29.
Wow.
Now, the big criticism all of the Democrats have is they're not standing up to Trump. We shouldn't confuse this with approval of Trump. Trump still has 50% approval, but there's about 20% who don't approve of him but don't like the way the Democrats are handling it. 57% said they want the party to increase its opposition to the Trump agenda. And there's growing dissatisfaction within the Democratic base. So, and the decline spans all ideological factions, with approval ratings falling 18 points among liberals and moderates. Now, by contrast, the Republican Party is rolling high. 79% of Republicans have a favorable view of the Republican Party. So 79% of Republicans like our party, and only 27% of Democrats like their party.
You know what the thing is, Dick? The Democrats, first of all, as I always say, are bumper sticker people. They stick with a bumper sticker. They can't move on. They got to focused because they're obviously not very bright for doing that. They just can't eat a la carte. You know
Right.
what I mean? They can only stick with one thing. They
With the
can't-
menu, you're right.
With the menu.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's usually the prefix menu. It's not
Yeah.
even a real menu. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're
Go
right.
to a la carte once in a while.
You're
Have
right
a-
about that. And the reason for this is not PR. It's that Donald Trump is turning the American economy around. U.S. industrial production surged in February to the record level, led by manufacturing and automobiles. Let's hear about it. The factory sector came roaring back in January and February. Industrial production in the United States surged in February, rising 0.7% in 1 month, more than triple the 0.2% increase economists had expected. The latest data from the Federal Reserve shows a marked expansion in industrial activity, with a total output reaching its highest level on record. Manufacturing output, which accounts for roughly 3/4 of industrial production, rose almost 1% in 1 month, the largest monthly gain in years. And a particularly notable driver of February's expansion was the auto sector, where motor vehicle parts and motor vehicles production jumped 9% in 1 month. This sharp increase stands in stark contrast to the sector's performance during the final year of the Biden administration, when car output declined by 0.5% a month.
Well, let me tell you something. Tesla's going to have to manufacture a lot more cars now with the Democrats beating those cars up and putting them
right.
on fire.
But and why are cars up like crazy? Because of the Trump tariffs. Because he's stopping foreign cars from coming in. He's saying that if you make your cars here, you can be exempt from tariffs. But if you make your cars abroad and try to sell them in the United States, we're going to clobber you with tariffs. The strength of February's data offers striking contrast to some of the more downbeat economic indicators that pundits have been talking about. While reports on retail sales and business sentiment have suggested a more sluggish start to the year, the industrial sector appears to be gaining momentum.
That's beautiful.
Beyond autos, business equipment and construction supplies also posted gains, indicating broad-based, across-the-board strength. Meanwhile, mining output, which includes oil and gas, rose 2.8%.
Sure, they got to keep up.
So, Trump has done is he understood that the Biden inflation was caused by overstimulating the economy, by increasing spending and mailing out cash, as the economy had already recovered from COVID. And because the economy had already recovered, instead of boosting the economy, all of that stimulus boosted inflation and did nothing to help the economy.
Well,
so Trump came in and he said, inflation has now run its course, and he was right. The Biden inflation has happened. It's been pocketed. And what's going on now is the inevitable reaction to inflation, which is a downturn, recession. And Trump said we can't let that recession happen. And the way to stop it is not the stupidity of Biden to pump more money into the economy.
Right.
Instead, it's to go around and get businesses to come here, to locate here, to move here. And that if you do that, you'll bolster the economy not by consumers spending more, which would cause inflation, but by business investing more, which fights inflation.
Well, there's a whole thing going on here. First of all, the automakers, they want to build cars here. Number one, when Biden did the mandate on the EV cars, he destroyed real cars, the car manufacturing business.
Right.
Because these guys go, whoa, we didn't tool our shops. You know what they do to tool for a new car? It takes years first to design it and then to do it. So right there, all the car manufacturers are probably thinking, wow, I'm going to go on vacation for a couple of years, right? So that's one thing. So now the car guys are back, and now the oil guys are back and all of that business because of the car guys being back.
Well,
and there's consumer confidence would with Biden, no way. With Trump, people are starting to say, wow, things are getting better. So it's this big game.
Just listen to all of the new investments in the U.S. that Trump has produced.
Let's hear it.
In 2 months. From auto manufacturers to big tech companies, businesses are investing in production in the U.S. as Trump continues to push its America First agenda with tariff threats, Mexico and Canada facing 25% tariffs. The Japanese car manufacturer Honda will move its production of the electric Civic model from Mexico to Indiana. Clarios, the Wisconsin-based company that creates batteries for different vehicles, announced that it would invest $6 billion to expand U.S. manufacturing. In a press release, the spokesman for the company said the plan aims to advance domestic energy and mineral independence by increasing the supply of vehicle batteries. Johnson & Johnson announced a $55 billion investment over 4 years to build manufacturing facilities in the United States, a 25% increase over the 4 years before that, and more than $100 billion annual contribution to the U.S. economy. Apple reaffirmed its commitment to invest $500 billion, $500 billion in the U.S. over the next 5 years. A spokesman said the company intends to hire 20,000 new workers and produce artificial intelligence servers. It plans to open a server factory in Houston in 26 and a manufacturing academy in Detroit, and expand investment in data centers in Arizona, California, Iowa, Nevada, North Carolina, Oregon, and Washington.
Wow, that's amazing.
Apple also confirmed that the Taiwan superconductor manufacturing facility in Arizona, which began under Biden, will begin producing chips for Apple. Trump looked to take credit for the latest announcement by implying in a social media statement that his tariff threats were Apple's tipping point in making the announcement. And Trump just announced that TSMC, the world's largest chip maker, would invest more than $100 billion in building chip-making facilities in the United States. NVIDIA also announced plans to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in American-made chips and electronics.
Billions of dollars.
In American-made chips and electronics over the next 4 years. A spokesman for the company said it expects to spend about $500 billion, $500 billion, on electronics in the U.S. over a 4-year period.
Amazing.
And he's done this in 2 months. So what's happening is he's saying, I'm not going to stimulate the economy by artificially inflating consumer demand, by increasing spending, because that's just going to cause inflation. I'm going to do it on the other side of the ledger, the supply side, the investment side, right, by getting companies to move here and expand their facility here.
And it's going to snowball.
Instead of selling it to American consumers and driving up prices, I'm going to sell them to foreign consumers and drive up our exports. And I'm going to use my tariff policies to force them to open their markets to the United States.
Brilliant.
So instead of spending the money domestically, which just causes inflation, I'm going to spend it on selling to foreign countries, and I'm going to do that by increasing tariffs, which is going to make them receptive to what I'm doing.
Wow, brilliant.
That's the difference between stupid economics and brilliant economics.
Brilliant. Even the greatest economists probably don't think like that.
Now, speaking of stupid, Andrew Cuomo, who's now running for mayor, was interviewed by the New York Post, and it was a great interview. He tried to deflect blame and stubbornly refused to admit mistakes in his lengthy record during the often testy 2-hour Post editorial meeting as he announced a comeback bid for New York's mayoralty. Cuomo claimed that it was left-wing, anti-Semitic, Democratic Socialists of America politicians who were the real people behind the lenient criminal justice laws he signed. He signed the bills as governor. Nobody forced his hand. This wasn't an auto pen. This was Cuomo signing it for no bail and for early release and for light sentences.
And he signed it. That's it.
Even when Congress even when Cuomo couldn't shift the onus, as with COVID-19's worst days, he wouldn't admit fault. This one gets me more than anything else. He defended his much criticized March 25th, 2020 directive issued by his health department requiring that nursing homes accept recovering coronavirus patients discharged from hospitals. He rescinded the policies, but not before it spread and the death toll of frail, elderly, immunocompromised residents soared. You won't be able to say we killed people, and that's not true, Cuomo insisted during one spirited exchange when he asked why he wouldn't own up to his mistake. When Cuomo did fess up, he did mostly so in retrospect, such as conceding that relaxing lockdown rules and school closures could have been done sooner.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Cuomo defended his approval of the cashless bail law in 2019, saying that a governor is not a dictator. And you do the best you can given the finances, given the political environment, given what you get from the legislature. And yet he still defends his sanctuary city policies, even as Trump is trying to deport people from New York and wants the help of the New York Police Department in finding 1 million illegal immigrants in New York. But don't forget it was Cuomo who signed the Green Light Law, allowing illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses, and proudly recalled blocking the last Trump administration from getting access to DMV data.
Right. And then you had motor voter from those licenses.
Right, exactly. Cuomo continues to deflect blame over his administration's disastrous COVID nursing home directive in half-baked apology. He attributed the politicized environment of the pandemic and said that Americans should have been more skeptical of the COVID vaccine. Cuomo dismissed as cruel and bizarre any accusations that he steered recovering COVID-19 patients into nursing homes at the behest of politically influential hospital executives who were worried about being overrun with patients stricken with a deadly disease. They didn't need to be worried because Trump brought the USS hospital ship and opened the Javits Center to excess patients. But they were empty. They were never used because Cuomo got them and put them all in nursing homes.
Literally, it was like 10 or 20 people in those Javits Center and the ship.
Cuomo also denied that he deliberately undercounted the number of nursing home deaths from COVID because he was writing a $5 million profit-making book praising his handling of the pandemic.
God.
Reports by both the state attorney general and the comptroller of New York concluded that he lowballed the number of deaths. If you produced incorrect information that you submitted to the federal government, that's a felony and the simplest felony to prosecute in denying he did it. But everybody says he did it. He also defending writing the book, saying it was ludicrous and really offensive for critics to claim that he was manipulating policy to make a profit and cashing in his book on the back of people who died from AIDS. But that's exactly what he did. Cuomo said, I thought there was a benefit saying we went first. We went through the worst. Let me tell you what we know. But he claimed not to remember one of his administration's most mocked autocratic pandemic rules requiring cash-strapped bars to sell food with drinks.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Some pubs deemed the mandated snacks Cuomo chips. Even as state regulators said notching did not meet the requirement of social distancing. I don't remember that one. What was that one again? That was not my idea, Cuomo said with a chuckle.
Oh, a chuckle.
Meanwhile, he also defended his green energy policies that his critics have slammed as unworkable. Cuomo pushed Indian Point nuclear plant in Westchester to shut down while banning fracking for natural gas.
God.
So if you don't have nuclear power and you don't have fracking, what do you have?
Nothing.
He
Lights
approved
out.
the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which requires New York to reduce economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030 and 85% by 2050. Well, the solution to all of this is not to elect him mayor in 2025.
Right. All right. We got to hit a break, but absolutely. All right. When we get back, the Dems, the judges at war with Trump.
while all this is sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group, while all this is going on, Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, a Republican, said he's committed to stopping judicial overreach after federal judges moved to stop Trump's deportation of criminal migrants. Grassley, in a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, said he supported Trump's memo directing federal agencies to enforce, and listen to this, the Federal Rule of Civil Procedure, which states that federal courts must require parties seeking a preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order to provide a financial guarantee. This aims to deter frivolous lawsuits and encourages coverage for lost taxpayer dollars when injunctions are later deemed to be wrongfully issued. So all of these plaintiffs, these radicals, are going to judges who are liberal and left-wing and saying, oh, if these cuts go through, veterans are going to die, the environment's going to be horribly polluted, hospitals will close and everything. So what Grassley is saying, okay, there's a procedure where you can say, okay, guys, I'm listening to you, you're saying all this. You're going to have to pay $100 million to the court if you're wrong. If I let these changes go through and they don't cause this disaster. But they're not doing that. So it's a free shot on goal. Say whatever you like. Get the judge to sign the restraining order. But for God's sakes, don't have him impose criminal penalties.
That's like loser pays type of thing.
So
right?
Grassley said, yeah, loser pays. Over the last 3 months, I've watched with concerns individual district judges have issued sweeping injunctions that reach far beyond the case or the controversy before them. These orders are often issued as preliminary injunctions or temporary restraining orders on an expedited basis with limited hearings. The Iowa senator revealed that according to a 23 Harvard Law Review study, there have been 96 nationwide injunctions over the last 4 presidencies in the 21st century, 01 to 23. But 64 of them, 2/3 of them, targeted Donald Trump. Nearly all of these orders were imposed by judges appointed by Democratic presidents, and 54 of the 64 orders were issued as preliminary injunctions or temporary restraining orders. So the Democrats' judge shop, they sit back and they wait and they say, out of the 405 district court judges in the United States, who are the most radical? Who are the craziest? And it doesn't matter if they're in a district that's affected by the cuts. They go to the judge in, God knows, Seattle, and they say, hey, we need a temporary injunction stopping this. And the cuts aren't in Seattle. They're all over the country. But the judge says, yeah, I agree with that. These are terrible. And he issues the injunction.
They could just go to any judge in any state?
Any judge in any state. But you can always go to any judge in any state. It's federal. But what's worse is that judge can issue an order for every state, even though he's just in his own local area. And that injunction is applicable in all 50 states.
So all they have to do is find the Biden judge.
Find a radical, crazy judge. And there are plenty of them. What Grassley's saying is make them post a bond. And if the mayhem doesn't work out as they say, then make them pay.
Yeah, right. Now, Trump bans trans in military. In response to Trump's order, the military said on February 11th that it will no longer allow transgender individuals to join the military and would stop performing or facilitating procedures associated with gender transitions for service members. Last month, the military said it will begin expelling transgender members. Excuse me. Trump said in his order that adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with the individual's sex conflicts with the soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. Trump issued a similar order during his first term, during which already serving transgender members were allowed to remain. Plaintiffs in the lawsuit argued that the order was illegal. Of course they do, right? Pointing to a 2020 Supreme Court ruling that employment discriminations against transgender people is a form of legal sex discrimination. lawyers for the government had argued in court that the military is entitled to bar people with certain conditions that make them unsuitable for service, also including bipolar disorder and eating disorders. At a March 12th hearing, they told Reyes that she should defer to the judgment of the current administration that transgender people are not fit for service. The judge repeatedly pressed them to justify their stance with evidence and at times expressed open outrage, at the order's language denigrating the character of transgenders. The military has about 1.3 million active duty personnel in the Department of Defense data. The Department of Defense data shows, while trans rights advocates say 15,000 transgender in the military, officials say the number is in the low thousands. So from 15,000 that we say, and the other ones say there's only in the low thousands.
Now, Trump is not just president; he's commander-in-chief of the military.
You're the boss.
If the commander-in-chief says these guys are not fit to serve,
that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
I don't feel confidence in them. I'm not going to send them into war. I'm not going to base our country's security on them.
Right.
Where does the judge get off in saying, no, listen to us, not to the commander-in-chief?
Yeah. He gets off the Trump train is where he gets off. Unbelievable. Hey, listen, if I have a restaurant and I don't like to cook, get out.
Yeah.
He doesn't wear a hairnet, get out. Anyway, so now a federal judge bars Trump ordering ban. Oh, we have a song for this, don't we? Federal judge bars Trump's order banning trans from military. Trump's executive order barring transgender people from military service, while a lawsuit by 20 current and would-be service members challenge the measure goes forwards. Judge Anna Reyes found that Trump's January 27th order, one of several issued by the president impacting legal rights for transgender Americans, likely violated the U.S. Constitution on sex discrimination. Reyes was appointed by Biden, figures, right?
So this is, and if there's any lawsuit that they're bringing that Trump is going to win, it's his right as commander-in-chief to decide who serves in the military.
That's it. Then we got, this is where I was thinking about playing the Zero song. Doja zeroes in on entitlement fraud. Anyway, President Trump plans to cut taxes and reduce the federal budget, puts a bullseye on wasteful spending in the Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security programs. Democrats say Musk exaggerating the cost of misspending when he said $700 billion could be saved by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Federal officials and think tanks say hundreds of billions of dollars are being wasted annually and show the government cannot get back their money on these entitlement programs. Federal spending on Medicare and Medicaid alone has grown by almost 80% of the past decade as the U.S. population ages. Growth in these and other health programs just keep going up. That's it. It's just what's happening in 23. With the growth comes fraud, right? Such as false medical billing, stolen patient identities, unneeded treatments, and money laundering. The Justice Department just arrested dozens of people accused of committing billions of dollars in Medicare billing fraud. Among those arrested last year were owners of a company that charged Medicare $900 million for unneeded wound grafts ordered for 500 dying patients. That's horrible, isn't it? The government uncovered a similar wound care scam in Arizona that built Medicare out of $330 million. Who's getting all this money, by the way? That's what I want to know.
Well,
if they're doing this,
the providers of the service are, the businesses are, the companies that own these Medicare companies.
Wow, it's unbelievable.
So what the Democrats are doing is saying you're cutting Medicare, you're cutting Social Security, cutting Medicaid. And what Trump and Musk are saying is the hell we are. We're simply cutting fraud.
Yeah. The government issued $72 billion in improper Social Security payments from 2015 to 22. Wow, $72 billion in 7 years. What's that, $10 billion a year? The House Republicans' budget calls for slashing $880 billion in federal spending. Democrats say this cannot be, of course they say this, right? Democrats say that cannot be achieved without cuts to entitlement programs, of course. Musk said those reductions can be reached by stopping federal misspending.
When we come back, we're going to talk about this a little more.
It's amazing.
But this is what the Democrats are doing. They're saying you're cutting Social Security, you're cutting Medicare, you're cutting Medicaid. But in fact, all they're doing is cutting the fraud associated with these programs.
Right, but the Democrats have to do that scare tactic thing, get the people's emotions. All right, when we get back.
Americans are voting with their feet and moving to red states from blue states.
Check this
Tell
out.
them, Doug.
A recent report found that Texas had a net migration number of 137,000 people coming into the state, while Florida has 136,000 people coming to the state. North Carolina came in third with net migration of 110,000. Wow. While South Carolina ranked fourth with the net of 72,000. So they're moving, Dick.
They sure
and
are.
You're right. With their feet. That's how they're doing. That's how they're voting. All right. Blue states defy Trump on trans men in women's sports. Blue states are defying Trump's executive order banning trans identifying males in female locker rooms. Thank you, President Trump. And sports putting public schools at risk of losing millions of dollars in federal funding. The Trump administration has now warned Maine to ban biological males from competing in girls' sports or risk losing federal funding, and soon begin investigating Illinois public schools for continuing to allow biological male and female locker rooms. That's horrible. I'd bust somebody's jaw open and go in my daughter's room. It's like a game of chicken, said Shannon Adcock, president of Awake Illinois, a parents and citizens organization. And I think it's going to be a big mistake for these blue states to call the bluff of Trump, absolutely, because he is fully committed to these federal orders. Title IX, right? Like Title IX.
Yep.
Trump signed an executive order on February 5th rescinding all federal funding from education programs that deprive women and girls of fair athletic opportunities, establishing a policy banning male participation in female sports. The executive order followed Trump's January 20 order banning males who identify as female from accessing female locker rooms and bathrooms.
So Trump is really going ahead on this. And the Democrats are so dumb, so stupid, that's why they're down to 27%, for testing this, for opposing this. The public overwhelmingly supports this.
First of all, what is the percentage of trans in the?
Yeah, it's tiny.
It's
tiny. Yeah.
They're looking for their vote. What are you going to get? A 0.5% of the vote?
If that.
So that's why they're stupid. Also, they're not even smart crooks.
They're not only testing Trump's gender policies, they're also really going after his deportation power, even though the country clearly wants these crazy gangs out of the country.
Oh, that's unbelievable. We're going to talk about the deportation power in the courts. Well, we got a minute. I'll start it. Trump administration is invoking rarely used authority to remove some non-citizens from the United States, laying the groundwork for the Supreme Court to weigh in on whether the controversial actions are legal. Donald Trump has framed his actions as efforts to root out non-citizens who support terrorists and banish members notoriously violent gangs. Outside groups and lawyers have accused the president of acting. First of all, why do you want to accuse him of acting illegally? I don't care if it's illegal or not. Get them out of the country, violent gangs, right? Trump prompted the largely novel legal question this month. First in case involving Mahmoud Khalid, a legal permanent resident involved in pro-Palestinian protests at colleges. And then again, when he rushed to fly alleged Venezuelan gang members out of the country. A third case in Boston further highlighted the administration's effort to test limits where possible to kick unwelcome non-citizens out of the country. It's creative, to put it mildly, maybe just blatantly unlawful. Nima Rahmani, a former California-based federal prosecutor, told the Washington Examiner of Trump's recent immigration.
And the deportees, this is 15, who the judge ordered returned to the U.S., turned out to have long criminal records. Murder suspects, sex offense against teenagers, smuggling illegal immigrants. And those were the folks that Trump wanted deported, that the judge wanted flown back to the United States.
Yeah, the gang.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, Tren de El Agua, which we're now calling TDA gangs. Okay, when we get back.
Doug, you know, when judges order deportees kept in the U.S., and they tell Trump he can't throw them out of the country, and they reverse his decisions, let's put a face and a name on some of these.
Yeah. Homeland Security said a murder suspect, a man accused of sex offense against a teenage girl. Oh, I can't even think about it. Another involved in smuggling illegal immigrants were among the Venezuelans deported under President Trump's orders over the weekend. A senior official at the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement said not all of the more than 200 Venezuelans sent to El Salvador had criminal records in the U.S., but that all of them were confirmed members of Tren de Agua gang. We're going to call it TDA gang. Make it a little easier, right? So all of them were in that gang. So go. Don't we have a song by Ray Charles? Mr. Cerna said it was critical that the migrants be ousted quickly, given TDA's gang new designation as a terrorist organization and the danger of recruiting more people from within the U.S. Keeping them in ICE, this is key also, this is so important. Keeping them in ICE custody where they can potentially continue to recruit new TDA gang members poses a grave risk to ICE personnel in the United States and as a whole. Holding hundreds of members of designated foreign terrorists where there's an immediate mechanism to remove them would be irresponsible. So, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg has questioned the need for a speedy removal, which the administration said it carried out under 1798 Alien Enemies Act. It's unbelievable. Why would they want...
But, you know, look at this from a political point of view.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party is now occupying the front pages in the newspaper and the lead articles on TV and radio with two kinds of cases. One saying, don't cut the waste in the budget, and the other saying, don't deport people who commit crimes.
That's anti-American.
Those are real popular positions, aren't they? Let's keep these murderers in the country, and let's keep this waste going on and this money being stolen from the taxpayer by wasting the efficiency.
Yeah. Oh, but Trump is a felon. Trump is a felon, and Musk is a Nazi.
Let's keep all of that happening.
Yeah.
Boy, if you're 27% approval and you want to come back, this ain't the way to do it, guys.
That ain't gonna happen.
Meantime, Trump can boast of double zero. 0 illegal immigrants and 0 inflation.
That's unbelievable.
Egg and gas prices are even down.
Right. The White House on March 17th announced a drop in egg and gasoline prices, calling it a win for Trump administration's economic agenda. He's so amazing. Americans are continuing to see the benefits as the economic agenda of President Trump and his administration comes into focus. The average wholesale price per dozen of eggs has dropped to $3.10 from $3.10 to from $6.50 55 a dozen, down 47% from January 21 of 2025. It's unbelievable. Egg prices soared in recent months, reaching an average of $4.95 per dozen in January.
And it's going on for gas, too.
Yeah,
The
right.
nationwide average.
Right. The primary, where's the gas thing right here? Oh, the nationwide average for gas has declined for 4 straight weeks, down 10 cents from 1 month ago to 42 cents from 1 year ago. The statement said, pointing to data showing that the average for a gallon of gas is $2.99 or less for more than two. First of all, not in Manhattan. I'm still paying $6 or 5 something on 11th Avenue. But that's amazing, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I want to know what the liberals are saying when they see this.
So,
Oh, no.
Trump is the double zero.
Yeah.
Zero inflation and zero immigration. What more do you want? This guy was elected to cut illegal immigration. He cut it to zero. And to cut inflation. He cut it to below zero.
I love it.
And in the meantime, he's stopping a recession, the normal response to lowering inflation, by all of these new businesses coming here to the United States.
Wow.
Let's go to Sandra in New Jersey.
Hi, Sandra, not playing the piano.
Oh, good afternoon, Dick and Doug. You know, I'm thinking about these judges. I'm thinking about Donald Trump, how they're trying to circumvent him. But he's very smart. He's going to circumvent them back. And I'll give you an example. Listen to this. I read this morning that today is Sunday. All flights will resume, and all these illegals, the bad ones, maybe the good ones, I mean, whatever ones, they're all going to go back. Maduro's taking them back. He agreed. And I'm thinking, let him decide which ones belong in El Salvador and which ones belong with him. He
Right.
calls them his kidnapped babies. He loves them. He can have them. And let him decide where they go.
Yep,
So
you're
Trump
absolutely
actually
right.
wins here.
God,
Right?
you're right.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely. All right. So we have a great song for this. Trump to void Fauci pardon. What's our song we got here? Look, Dick doesn't hear it. It's just pardon me, he's saying the whole time.
Oh, okay.
Trump claims Biden's auto pen pardons a void. Or auto pen. It's unbelievable. Trump said he would be voiding the pardons Sleepy Joe issued, as Trump said Biden used an auto pen, which means it didn't have to be Biden, right? It could be anyone using that auto pen, Dick?
Yep.
Was that the idea of
That's
this?
right.
Right. And so right there, that's it. And Joe Biden gave the unselected committee of politics. So if he's, first of all, how could they have an auto pen for that kind of a thing? I guess
You can have it for anything if the
stamp.
president's too weak to write or too sleepy to wake up.
It's like the guy with the stamp.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
stamps the check,
That's
the
right.
signature for the check, right?
Meantime, a study finds that Democrats are losing young voters, possibly for decades. Decades. Poor messaging and issue choices, like the stuff we're just talking about, is driving younger voters out of the Democratic base and into the arms of Trump and the Republican Party, where they could stay comfortably for decades. In the latest analysis of the 24 election, the 18 to 29 youth vote is said to be growing more concerned about the economy and less about liberal side issues like climate, and is eager to support a party with an authentic and modern message. The John Delta Volpe, who is the director of polling at the Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics, said the economic anxiety gripping young Americans is real and profound. Their skepticism of institutions stems from lived experiences of systemic failures. Conservatives are winning the youth messaging war. Della Volpe wrote that those issues that have led to a shift by younger voters to the GOP beyond the surprise 24 vote that saw Trump win 46% of the 18 to 29 vote.
Wow.
And Harris held to 52%. Big change, 10-point change from 2020. We've always believed that given a fair shot to reach young people on an even playing field, our ideas would win the day. Once we weren't censored, throttled, and shadow banned on platforms like X, YouTube, or TikTok, we were proven right. Democrats need better ideas if they want to compete.
Well, I think, Dick, one of the things with the youth, and we talked about this last year, was COVID. And they were locked down. You couldn't go to school. You couldn't play your sports and get your scholarships. So they looked at the Biden administration, Democrats, and said, these guys are locking us down. What are they doing?
Yep.
Power grab that they had on us. So that's what I think is the big thing here also. All
Now,
right, you ready for the next story?
Yeah, well, one of the big things the Republicans are doing is cutting Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid. And part of the reason is because the states have gone completely stark raving crazy in their expansions of the Medicaid program.
You should hear this.
And you got to cut them back.
Unbelievable. California faces $6.2 billion budget gap in the state's Medicaid service, which could force Gavin Newsom, a Democratic and Democratic lawmakers, to reevaluate future coverage for some of the 15 million people who received health care through the program, including immigrants. The shortfall comes a year after California launched the ambitious coverage expansion to provide free health care to and all low-income adults, regardless of their immigration status. That's costing far more than the state projected. No kidding. California also is bracing for major budget hits if Republicans in Congress follow through with a plan to slash billions of dollars in Medicaid and potentially jeopardizing the coverage for millions of people in California, provide free health care to more than a third of its 39 million people.
This is a big play that's going on that's really going to change the politics of the country. Trump has to cut the budget in order to pay for his tax cuts and in order to stop a recession from coming.
Right.
So what he's doing is he's saying to the states, I'm going to decrease the share of Medicaid that we pay for, Washington pays for.
And the state
normally,
picks up the difference.
When Medicaid was passed, the idea was half would be federal, half would be state. But then, because of COVID and because Obama has failed with his universal coverage ideas, the percent of federal coverage rose to 2/3 to 90%. And what Trump is saying now is, I'm going to cut it back to what it originally was, 50-50. Mm-hmm. And that's going to force the Democratic governors to really cut back on Medicaid and really slash coverage, because the artificial subsidies that Biden has been providing aren't going to be actually happening. The cost of the real expansion.
The cost of the recent expansion to cover all low-income adults is $2.7 billion more than the state budgeted, because California underestimated the number of people who would sign up for the services. Oh, really? California officials said they only had a month of data last year when the state had to produce projections for the budget. Oh, really? How convenient, right? In Illinois, excuse me, it's also expanded coverage in recent years to more low-income residents, regardless of immigration status. Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker is proposing a $330 million cut to coverage for migrants ages 42 to 64.
So California and Illinois both stepped into the panic over the COVID stuff, and they dramatically increased these programs. And now Trump is saying, no, the COVID emergency is over. I'm not going to pay for the same levels that we had when there were millions and millions of people who became sick. And now the states are stuck with it. And what they're trying to do is blame the Republicans for cutting Medicare. But Medicaid, but they really haven't cut it.
Right, get a job.
So when we get back, let's look at how the liberal judges are trying to block Trump from his plans.
Let's.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. And Tony in New Jersey is calling in and has a really good point about how Trump is trying to re-educate the country in economics.
Hi, Tony.
Hi. Hey, Dick and Doug, good morning. I love your economic recovery camp meeting revival this morning. I think I love your intro this morning about the tariffs and about people coming from different parts of the world to invest in America. I think the first part of Trump's revival was when he won America back. And the second part is going to be when America becomes prosperous and America sees, what prosperity is.
You're so right,
and
Tony.
Think when I listen to what you're saying, it's and I hear about the young people moving toward President Trump. We've had such a hard 4 years that America is really getting it, and I love it. And I love how he goes all around the country explaining and teaching. This is what we're going to be seeing. That people are going
what's going on here is that America has always been used to choosing between two horrible outcomes: unemployment and recession on the one hand, or inflation on the other. And what Trump is saying is there's another way, which is don't overstimulate the economy by throwing money at people and they overspend and you end up having inflation. Instead, get other companies from other countries to move here and get American companies to produce more and export it abroad and let the foreigners spend this money, which doesn't cause inflation here, but instead creates jobs here. And you're right, Tony. It really amounts to a re-education of the country in economics.
That's great. Thank you, Tony. That was great.
Now, how do we stop liberal judges from blocking Trump? Article 3 of the Constitution says that the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain. Okay? Doesn't say anything about district courts or circuit courts or the 100 judges in circuit courts or the 405 judges in district courts.
Like you
it
said
just
earlier.
says do whatever Congress wants to establish. With that plain language in mind, DeSantis said we should decertify those courts. Congress has the authority to strip jurisdiction of federal courts to decide these cases in the first place.
In other words, a state court. Explain that to me.
There are state courts which the state controls. But these actions against Trump are being brought in federal court under federal district court judges appointed by Biden and Obama, largely.
Right.
And the Constitution says you don't have to have these courts. All we need you to have is a Supreme Court.
Right.
You don't have to have lower federal courts. Congress can create them or abolish them as it wants to. The Constitution, not Congress, created the Supreme Court. But the Constitution did not create the lower courts. It merely authorized Congress to do so, which means that Congress could also abolish these courts and should make that attempt in an effort to crush the current judicial insurrection. With that spirit in mind, Republicans in Congress took aim at the Federalist-dominated judiciary. Among other things, they used the Judiciary Act of 1802 to eliminate 6 district court judgeships. On Sunday, Gingrich made this very point. He said those upset by the emerging dictatorship of district court judges behaving as though they were president should read the Judiciary Act of 1802. Jefferson and his party completely revised the court system and abolished a series of federal judges they deemed illegitimate, a warning to the current out-of-control judiciary.
Wow.
That's the solution. It really is.
You think it's going to come?
Well, I think it'll pass the House. The Senate filibuster will block it. But it is such a potent threat to the jobs of so many judges that they're going to think twice before they vote to overrule Donald Trump. All of these schemes to modify the federal judiciary are a little bit like FDR trying to pack the Supreme Court. It didn't work, but it worked because it so scared the judges that they started. Nobody ever dared to overthrow his laws again.
Right, there you go. Consequence. All right. Trump has hundreds of millions in leftover campaign. This is beautiful. It's the typical Trump thing, right? President Trump's political operation is sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars, a staggering amount for a political figure who's term limited. The campaign stands to make much more when Musk is reportedly set to give another $100 million. That has raised a question about just how Trump will go about using his enormous financial firepower in the months and years to come. A debate that is already playing out among some of the president's orbit.
That's one of the reasons Trump gets everything passed on party lines.
Why?
Because the Republicans are scared to death to vote against Trump because they'll buy themselves a primary fight and they'll be out of office.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that last week. Unbelievable.
Now, Trump is also playing tough with Iran. He sent a letter to Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, that included a 2-month deadline for reaching a new nuclear deal. It's clear that the 2-month clock begins from the time the letter was delivered. But if Iran rejects Trump's outreach and doesn't negotiate, the chances for U.S. or Israeli military action against Iran's nuclear facilities would dramatically increase. Iran's nuclear program has advanced over the past 4 years, and it's closer than ever to producing a nuclear weapon. Its stockpile of 60% enriched uranium is enough for 6 bombs, if they're enriched to 90%. Iran denies it's pursuing nuclear weapons. But 2 weeks ago, Trump revealed that he sent a letter to Iran saying that the U.S. is down to its final moments with Iran. He said, we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Something is going to happen very soon. I would rather have a peace deal than the other option. But he said the other option, which is obviously a military attack, would solve the problem.
See, you know what? Here's the problem with Iran, as opposed to, let's say, Putin or somebody else in Europe with the bomb, right? Iran doesn't care it kills all its people. They don't care. They think they're going to wherever, to their heaven.
76 virgins, yeah.
72 male virgins they're going to have. Whatever it is, right? They don't care. See, Putin cares. He's going to go, I don't want my grandmother dying or somebody dying from the fallout. Iranians don't care. So that's the problem why Trump is going to have to do what he has to do to stop him.
Now, there is a delicious story.
Delicious?
Delicious.
Yummy.
Letitia James.
Ugh, that's not delicious.
The Attorney General of New York State, who got Trump indicted on the charge of lying to banks, and got Trump indicted and got him convicted. And the conviction is still on the record because she said that he overstated the value of his real estate. Now, the people that made the loans didn't object. Trump repaid the money that he borrowed, and there was no fraud.
Was that the beautiful
James,
Trump Tower we were talking about?
Yeah. Letitia James used the power to indict him. So fast forward to 2011, when her 2005 adjustable rate mortgage escalated to 10.2%. Letitia James asked the feds for help. But the feds had strict eligibility standards, limiting the aid to owner-occupied properties with no more than 4 units. The reasoning was clear. The program aimed to assist regular homeowners and not landlords of multifamily rental businesses. But Letitia James, in her application, said she lived in a dwelling with only 4 units. But in the certificate of occupancy of 2001, the building was officially designated as a 5-family apartment building, making ineligible for federal assistance. Additionally, James submitted a financial hardship application in her statement saying, I'm experiencing a financial hardship, and as a result, I'm on default under the loan documents. I do not have sufficient income or access to liquid assets to make the monthly mortgage payments in the future.
Oh, you should have used the song "Karma, Karma, Karma, Chameleon."
Yeah, that's
that
right.
Would have been right there.
That's,
this is
so this woman who went after Trump for a loan that the bank made legally, which Trump fully repaid, nobody was hurt, and she in her past, not distant past, the last 10 years, has a subsidy from the federal government limited to dwellings of 4 units or less, and she's got a dwelling of 5 units or more.
Oh, please go after
That's
her.
why I said it's such a delicious story.
Now that's delicious.
Yeah.
Not her. She's
In that,
disgusting.
now,
That's delicious.
in this trade stuff, Trump is throwing a curveball to Europe, and you have to appreciate how fundamental the issue is. Europe funds itself, we talked about this the other day, not off income taxes nearly as much as we do, but off the value-added tax, the VAT. So that's imposed at the point of sale. So Trump is saying, like a sales tax, so he's saying, okay, if you impose a VAT on products you import from the United States, I'm going to treat it as a tariff, like a tariff.
Sure,
and I'm going to impose a tariff on you to reciprocate for the one you're imposing on us. And if the foreign countries eliminated the VAT on those products, all the American products would cost 20% less than their local products do. And everybody would buy American, and their local businesses would be out of business. So Trump is saying, I'm going to consider that tax break that you are giving your domestic companies and the tax penalty you're imposing on American imports as a tariff, and I'm going to reciprocate with tariffs of my own.
Wow.
So it has huge effect in Europe and huge effect in the United States, too.
Wow. Unbelievable. This is incredible, too. Incredible effects of zero illegal immigration. Jose, I have to say this. I normally wouldn't try to put this name out there, but I'm going to do it. Jose Quinchilla de Jesus Villagran Perez.
Yay!
Wow, that was unbelievable. I want an ice cream cone when we're done. This guy, he left Guatemala in early February and made it to Reynosa, just south of the U.S. border, where he sat and waited and waited. He later told Border Patrol agents that there weren't enough people for the smugglers to make a run across the border. That's unbelievable. They finally cobbled together a group of 4 Guatemalans who were sent across and quickly near. This is funny. What President Trump has done at the border is almost unfathomable, and Mr. Perez's cases gets to the heart of it. A year ago in February, more than 23,000 Guatemalans made a run at the southern border. Last month, agents reported fewer than 1,500. It's the same across all demographics. In February of 24, agents caught 106 Romanians. Last month, they encountered only 1. Numbers have plummeted amongst Venezuelan, Mexicans, Chinese, and Haitians. The drop has a ripple effect across the Western Hemisphere. Migrants making their way up the spine of the Americas are turning around in the middle of their journey. In the U.S., deportation officers once assigned to help process people at the border are now helping arrest and deport people in the interior.
Trump is going to put an ad on Craigslist for more illegal immigrants so that he can occupy his ICE agents.
You know what this reminds me of? In 76, Castro versus Carter, and then in 80, Reagan versus Castro. In 76, I'm going down to FDR with Richie Fagetta, my artist friend who taught me a lot in advertising. And we hear on the news on the FDR at 7 o'clock in the morning, Castro sending 70,000 people on boats from prisons to Miami. And Carter says they're not going to come in, they're not going to let them land. And on the way home at 3 o'clock, 72,000 Cuban refugees are in the ports of Miami, and they have fences. Horrible. In 1980, Castro did the same thing to Reagan, and the same thing. It was funny. It's weird. I was on the FDR going into the city again with Richie Vegeta.
In fact, you were stuck in traffic from before.
Yeah, of course, back then. And we're going to say the same thing. The guy comes on and says, Castro's doing it again with 60, 70,000 refugees going in, and Reagan says they're not coming in. And just like a Popeye cartoon, when they shoot and the boats all turn around, the U-turn, Reagan had the National Guard or whomever he had out there, I don't remember.
Coast Guard.
The Coast Guard, shoot over the bow of all these little ships and little boats, and they all it looked like a cartoon where they were turned around, U-turn, and went back home. Same thing. Reagan was not taking it. Sorry, it's not going to happen. Just like Trump.
So Trump has a terrible national shortage of illegal immigrants coming into the United States. And these guys that are waiting at the border saying, I'll be joined by 20 or 30 other guys in the next couple of hours, are waiting day after day after day, and nobody's showing up.
Oh, it's just not working. It's a cold room. What's going on?
So when we get back, we're going to talk about how Trump is going to pull federal funding for New York City subways if they do not reduce crime. This is Dick Morris on the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by Patriot Gold. When Trump was running for office, he said that he would fight crime and he would bring down the crime rate in cities. But the problem is that there's no federal government responsibility for crime. All the police are controlled by local government, by New York City and New York State. So while he can order ICE to go around rounding up illegal immigrants, he can't order the New York City police to do anything. So now he's stepping into the breach with a new idea, which is he had his transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, say that because of the number of high-profile crimes on the subways, we're going to pull federal funding from New York. We're going to deny them the money to run the subways. Quote, if you can't keep your subway safe, if people can't go into the subway and not be afraid of being stabbed or thrown from tracks or burnt, we're going to pull your money away. And he warned the transit systems in New York, Chicago, Washington, all could lose their federal dollars if they don't clean up.
Yep, I'm going to take your games away from you like a mother does with their kids.
So what Trump, this is so important. What Trump is doing is he's expanding federal power, taking away the money and saying, if you don't do this. This goes back to 1964 when the Civil Rights Act passed and ordered school desegregation. And the South said, who gives a damn? You ordered it in 1956 and we didn't do it. We ain't desegregating. And then Lyndon Johnson got a bill passed the next year providing federal aid to education. And he said, but you're not going to get any of it if you don't desegregate. Now, all of a sudden, the schools across the South said, we give up, we get it. And segregation went away and didn't return. Then, about 20 years later, the United States needed to increase safety on highways. So they passed a bill saying everybody has to wear seatbelts. And the local government said, no, our traffic cops aren't going to pull people over for that. Yeah. This isn't a federal responsibility. Yeah. And then the Fed said, if you don't do that, you're going to lose highway funding. So all of a sudden they say, oh, click up or lock up or whatever.
Right.
So what Trump is doing now is applying the same idea to criminal justice. He's saying that I give you $60 billion a year in funding to subsidize your police, $15 billion to subsidize your prison, $7 billion for new technology in your police department. You're going to lose all of it if you continue letting people out with no bail, if you continue, after you catch them, you release them, if you continue banning long jail sentences, and if you continue your policies on the subways.
There will be consequence.
This is the most radical and incredible extension of really the power of the federal government.
It really is amazing.
Boy, it's important.
Another extension, the deadline to lift the congestion tax. With 1 day left to go on Trump's administration's March 21st deadline for New York to end its congestion pricing toll, Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy. Again, Sean Duffy posted a 30-day extension notice to social media Thursday. While Duffy restated the administration's demand for Hochul, that's Governor Hochul, to end the tolling program, which charges most motorists $9 a day to drive south of 60th Street in Manhattan. He also extended the window 30 days as talks are ongoing. The federal government and the president are putting New York on notice. Duffy tweeted in an X post addressed to Hochul, "Your refusal to end cordon pricing and your open disrespect towards the federal government is unacceptable." And he continued, "We will provide New York with a 30-day extension as discussions continue." Duffy wrote, "Know that the billions of dollars the federal government sends to New York is not a blank check," he threatened. "Continuing in non-compliance will not be taken lightly." The delay comes as New York's elected officials and transit honchos reaffirm their intention to ignore the federal deadline. Let me be clear. These attacks on congestion prices are an attack on New York's sovereignty. New York has the right to govern itself.
Jerry Nadler said, my college roommate.
Oh, yeah. Where does it say Nadler? Oh, yeah. Your
Who's
friend
a congressman from New York. I lived with him and got him elected.
So blame Dick for some of this. Sorry.
He said New York has the right to govern itself, to implement policies to improve the lives of its residents, and to make decisions that benefit our infrastructure. That has nothing to do with this congestion pricing. The only reason she's pushing the congestion pricing toll is because it's a tax. It raises more money. And she's going to use the tax to subsidize the MTA in their new construction program.
Right.
And Duffy has said that we're not going to let you do that. We're not going to let you impose this tax. And they're busy fighting over it, but Duffy will ultimately win.
And he also
because
said,
they control the money.
And retroactively revoke a key federal authorization to the toll that has been given by his predecessors, a move that prompted Trump to declare himself king on social media, which they got, right? The MTA immediately filed suit in New York federal court claiming Duffy's orders were unconstitutional. The Trump administration has
Let's go to Dino in Queens.
Hey, Dino, how are you?
Hi. Okay, hi, Mike.
Hey, how about Mike?
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
You're on.
When Trump released the barring of drilling, when he okayed barring of drilling for oil companies,
right?
Did they respond by drilling more? The drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, you bet they have. That's one of the reasons why gasoline prices at the pump have dropped by 50 cents over this year. They're now averaging $2.99 as opposed to $3.50 or $3.60 because they're anticipating an increased flow of gas because of the drill, baby, drill. And Trump's actions are having an immediate effect.
Gotta love the guy, huh?
Yep, you do.
Hey, Mike.
Now, when you look through some of the election data, you realize there is a vast partisan and gender gap between men and women who have or who don't have a college education. If you've been to college, you're much more likely to be against Trump, according to NBC. Women who've attended college are 52 points less favorable to Trump than women who've not been to college. And among men, those with college are 40 points less favorable to Trump than those who haven't been to college.
Yeah, that's because all the college professors are liberals and they teach them, they indoctrinate them.
That's right.
That's what I'm going with.
That's right.
That.
And that's going to be one of the big things I think Trump is going to work on.
It's not about the education. Oh, look at the stupid people like Trump and the smart people. No, the indoctrinated people do not like Trump.
Now, Mike asked about oil companies. President Trump signed an executive order Thursday to boost the ability of the U.S. to extract critical minerals while he's still pursuing a critical minerals deal with Ukraine. It's a big thing in this country. And as you know, we're signing agreements in various locations to unlock rare earth minerals and a lot of other things all over the world, but particularly in Ukraine. The order invokes wartime powers, specifically the Defense Production Act, to tap into America's minerals. The Defense Production Act grants presidents broad powers to expand production of materials deemed necessary to national security. Our national economic security are now acutely threatened by a reliance on hostile foreign powers' mineral production. It's imperative for our national security that the U.S. take immediate action to facilitate domestic mineral production to the maximum extent possible. And that order is going to be huge. It contrasts with Joe Biden's decision in the last 2 years of his presidency to shut down the mine for rare earth minerals in Minnesota because it endangered the Boundary Lakes in his environment's view. And then the government shutting down in previous years mines on the Nevada-California border that gave us lots of rare earth minerals, but the EPA shut them down.
Yeah, because of the spotted worm or something like that.
What Trump is now saying is, the hell with that. We're going right ahead and we're mining these rare earth minerals. And the left, the environmentalists, are opposed to it. But what they're not realizing, or they're ignoring, is that without rare earth minerals, you're not going to have any solar batteries.
Yeah, right.
You're not going to have any windmills. You're not going to have any cell phones. You're not going to have any computers. You're not going to have any of this. And Trump is now throwing that argument out.
You know, but the only thing is the left doesn't care about America having these minerals, what's important for us. The rest of the world has them. We'll get them from them. There's no borders, the whole thing, you know.
Yep.
That's what that's about. Anyway, the court blocks non-citizen voting in New York City. New York City's attempt to allow non-citizens to cast ballots in local election violates the state's constitution. The state's top court ruled Thursday. The decision rests on state law and isn't directly applicable to other fights over non-citizen voting, but it does mark a major blow to what had been a growing movement to expand the franchise. Unbelievable.
Well, the judge, Rowan Wilson, said in a 6-1 ruling that the state constitution allows voting only by citizens, and this business of extending it to non-citizens
finally
is just illegal.
Finally.
So when we get back, we're going to talk about the judge who is stopping the deportations of these Venezuelan gang members. And it turns out that this isn't the first time we've heard about him. The first time we heard about him was when he allowed lies to be the basis for warrants for the FISA courts in the Russia
and his name
scandal.
Is
Boasberg.
Bozo.
Yeah, Boasberg.
Bozo.
That's when we come back. Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. The Obama-appointed judge who ruled against Donald Trump's deportations of Tren del Agua gang members played a key role in the failed Russia-Trump collusion accusations when he was the presiding judge over the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FISA court. Judge Boasberg gave ex-FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith, who pleaded guilty in John Durham's Trump-Russia investigation, a slap on the wrist compared to the jail sentence that federal prosecutors wanted him to serve. Kleinsmith admitted to falsely editing a CIA email in 2017 to say that Trump advisor Carter Page was not a source for the CIA when the agency actually told the Bureau that Page was an operational conduit, prompting Durham to argue that his deceptive conduct had fueled public distrust of the FBI and the entire FISA program. So instead of jail time, Boasberg handed Kleinsmith a year of probation, community service, and no fine, saying that the disgraced former FBI lawyer's punishment of losing his job and reputation was enough. So this guy Boasberg, who has been fighting Trump to be able to try to keep murderers and rapists and killers and drug dealers in the United States, had previously been fighting to allow the intelligence community to lie in order to get Trump on this phony Russia collusion scandal that we found didn't exist.
Well, I'm going to tell you, a lot of these guys are going down that went after Trump during the last 4 years. So they're coming back to get these guys. So keep doing what they're doing. Keep doing it.
Let's go to Kenny in Queens.
Gentlemen, great show. And, the invasion of America is taking hold. The 65 Immigration Act, nonstop illegals for 60 years, is kicking in. That's why we're having so much trouble, because these leftists are in there. The leftists have been rebuilt by the 65 Immigration Act, and the illegals are giving birth. And we got to face the facts that certain places are gone forever, like the cities. You're not going to reverse up in Boston. You ever hear the mayor woo-woo?
No, you are going to reverse it, Kenny. Not by throwing them out, because some of them you can't, but because they're becoming Republican. They're learning that when they pay taxes and get a job, that it's the Republican policies that are helping them. And that's why Trump got 46% of the Latino vote, up from 32% 4 years before. And that was the major factor in Trump's victory. So what's going on is, we are going to reclaim these people, because these are human beings who have a brain, and when they get to the U.S., they find that they need to start voting Republican.
What do you think? And you got
think so.
Kenny, you had a point, though, about gas prices, I thought.
Yeah, I do. Gas prices are going down, and that's helping all the businesses out there who rely on trucking, because this country, let's face it, it's the trucking industry. But I think we should also build up our train system, too. We know to get to the stores you need trucks, and the gasoline prices going down. But listen, New York State, they stopped the natural gas lines here, but the kooky governor Hochul ain't going to do nothing about it, because they're left wingers. These are put in there by immigrants who are Democrats for the last 60 years. You can't deny it. You keep coming up with this phony statistics. Look at California. Exhibit California. Look at the 5 boroughs of New York and the communist city council. They're all immigrants or kids of immigrants. Democrats, hardcore leftists. They're not changing. Why are you pushing that for?
Yeah, no. We're getting those votes. We're getting them right in front of our eyes. Let's go to Joseph in Connecticut.
Hey, Joseph.
Hello, Dick and Doc. I want to talk about what RFK Jr. is pushing for. But first, I am a naturalized citizen. I came in the 50s with my family, brothers, sisters,
Welcome.
On the Andrea Doria. So I lived in the Bronx for 40 years, and I've been in education 50 years. So immigrants before the 65 Act, very successful. My father worked in the South Bronx as a cabinet maker. There were factories everywhere. My mother's a dressmaker and a seamstress in the Bronx.
Oh, you must be Italian.
They walked to their factories, and they were all over the place, and we lost all that. So, but anyway, I'm very. We worked very hard, and immigrants are very important, but they have to be legal. Like me, I went in front of a judge in '61. I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, legal immigration is wonderful for the United States. But what Trump is doing is he's putting a new slant on who should be legal. He's saying, legal immigrants, but then he's saying, I'm going to let rich people and educated people who can start businesses, who can provide jobs, I'm going to let those folks in. And right now, I just read that the federal government has raised $7 billion in the last 2 months from these gold card visas that Trump is offering, where for $5 million you can buy a visa that'll let you get into the United States anytime you want. And he sold 1,000 of those so far.
Really?
And that money's going directly into the Treasury. And it's admitting people to America who can help us produce. This all goes
People
with the
with
segment
value.
I started with earlier in the show, that all of these companies are moving to the U.S. They're setting up operations here. Honda, Apple, all of them are creating jobs in America because of Trump's policies. And that is stopping the potential inflation that really could be hurting us.
And also, with the border putting the wall up and grabbing all these people, is stopping people from coming through the border.
Yeah, he's stopping people we don't want, and he's encouraging people we do want.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's called the national interest. It's called putting America's first.
That's right.
Let's go to Steve in Brooklyn. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, great program. An idea that it's the right time, right man as president. The critics would object, saying it's way too expensive, and I would retort that it'll be far more expensive in the future, and we need to get going. Eisenhower built up the interstate road system. Yep. We have a national electrical grid. The national road system of highways already owns the right-of-ways along all the roads in all 48 contiguous states, which means we don't have to go through all the eminent domain legal things to get it. We could set up a water piping system along the entire interstate system. It's already owned by the federal government, which has preeminence in the cases. Furthermore, if there are ruptures in pipelines, we're on the interstate and repair trucks can get to it very quickly. It will provide tons and tons of jobs. All we need are pipes.
That's a hell of an idea.
Yes.
That is a brilliant idea, Steve. I'm going to check that out. First time I've heard anyone talk about that. And you're right about the right-of-ways. You're right that we wouldn't need to worry about eminent domain. I'm going to check that out. That could be great. Steve. One of the things I love about this show is listening to the very bright people who call in and give us ideas.
And we got to go soon. First, I just want to say happy birthday in heaven to my daughter. It's her birthday today, and so that's good. And Dick Morris, it's an honor to be here.
It's good to be here.
All right, thank you, everyone. This was great, and that was great, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
No. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
No. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.